Hi guys, this is Leela. Welcome to my channel Leela WebDev. In this video, we will learn about some of the points or the important points we need to remember while we are using the storage in our Docker. So now we have learned the different types of storages like volume mount, bind mount and also the TmpFs mount. We have seen in our previous videos, we have covered these all the things and how to use with a simple example also like Jenkins application, we have seen it. Now apart from this one all, so let's summarize these all the points, important points which we need to remember this importantly, or in the interview this will be very much useful for you when you are attending for an interview regarding the Docker and all those things. So let's try to grasp or let's try to summarize one by one what are the points that we need to remember. Let's go. So till now we have seen about the volume mount, bind mount and also the TempFS storage. So these are the three types of storage which we have seen it. Now let us understand what are the points we need to remember while using the volume mount, bind mount and also the TempFS mount. Any of these two mounts or storages. So these are the points. So what we are discussing. So that is the discussion points. These are the points which we need to remember important while we are using any of this storage. Now the first one is we have to use the volume mount for most of the applications deployed on the Docker engine where location doesn't matter. So that means you know the volume mount whenever you are trying to create an application. So most of the applications whenever you are trying to create application, the most of the recommended one or the highest priority which we need to take care is the creation of this storage using the volume mount only. So if you have a scenario that where the location doesn't matter, location means here that data storage, the storage where you are trying to make. So if that doesn't matter, so anywhere you can store it means then you can, it's better to use the volume mount only. So the volume mount is created in the Docker root area. So I already explained you about what is this Docker root area, and that is nothing but var/lib/docker. So this is the volume mount Docker root area. And here this is the place where the volume mount data storage will be stored. If you customize that, it will change. So this is the default one. When you try to install the Docker engine, this is the default Docker root area which the Docker will be creating. And if you don't want this location means you can customize that, and then the Docker root area will become the customized path. So that is the place where the volume mount data will be stored. So this is one thing which you need to understand. You can know the Docker root area by using the docker info command. For example, let's say that you don't know the Docker root area. I already told you that the default one is the /var/lib/docker, right? So if you install the Docker engine, if you change it means the path will change. If you want to know, if you doesn't know about the Docker root area in the Docker host machine, and if you want to know the Docker root area means, then you need to use the docker info command. If you type the docker info command, then you will be able to get the Docker root area. These are all in our previous videos, we have already covered it. Under that directory only the volume mounts will be created. So the volume mounts will be created only under that directory. That directory is nothing but the Docker root area. And also we can share the volume mount and the bind mount to the multiple containers. So this one also we have already discussed. So the volume mount and the bind mount, whichever the mounts you are trying to create, we can share it between the multiple containers. So that means if you are having two containers, the two containers can share the same data storage. So that is one thing which we need to do. And also we have already did this one in our previous videos. If we are working with the Docker Swarm tool means, then we need to use the -- mount option and -v option only for the Docker engine. If you are using the Docker engine means, then -v option and also the -- mount option you can use it. But if you are using the Docker Swarm tool means, then we need to use only the -- mount option. The -v option will not work in the Docker Swarm tool. Whereas in the Docker engine in the Linux, so you can use both -- mount or -v option. Anything will be working. If you are really working on the Docker engine means, then we need to go for the -v option. You can also use the -- mount option while using the Docker engine. It's not a problem. So it's up to you. So whichever you want to use it, you can use it. Both the -v option and also the -- mount option will work only in the Docker engine. Whereas in the Docker Swarm tool, only the -- mount option is the only thing which will be working. But when you are using the Docker Swarm tool, you have to use only the -- mount option only. Remember that if you want to share the volume mount or bind mount between the multiple containers, it is recommended to use only the read-only permission if you don't want your applications to modify the data. So here what I am trying to tell you is, so for example, let's say that you are having a volume mount, and if you want to share that volume mount or the bind mount, whatever it may be, between the multiple containers, so then it is recommended to use only share that volume mount or the bind mount as a read only to the container, so that the applications cannot modify or the containers cannot modify the data. So that is one thing. Why? Because if one container modifies the data, other containers will get affected. So this is the thing. So for example, let's say that if the container is having a read write permission, means then if a container modifies the data, automatically the other container which is sharing that data storage, so will get affected. If you are okay with that, means then you can go for it, but it is not the recommended one. So that is the thing. The container which manipulates the data, so now if you want to have a permissions, means if you want the container to modify the data, means, so for example, let's say that the container which manipulates the data, you can give read write permission. The containers which serves the data, means then you can give only the read permission only. So like that, depending on the requirement, so however you want to manage the containers and the data volume mount data or the bind mount data, so you need to give the particular permissions to the data storage. So that is what I want to discuss with you. So another one is the use bind mount to share any file system on the Docker host machine to the containers. As I already told you, right, the volume mount will be created only in a particular Docker root area. So that means that is the location, but that is a default location which it will be created. So we don't have any access to that one. For example, let's say that the entire Docker host machine, if you want to share it, means something like that, any file system, means then we need to use the bind mount data. We need to use the bind mount here, not bind mount only if necessary and there is no other choice. So when we need to use this bind mount, so only when it is necessary only, then only we need to use the bind mount if there is no choice. That means if you want some file system to be shared in the container, means then only we need to use the bind mount. We need to use volume mount as much as possible. So wherever it is possible, we need to use the volume mount only. Taking a backup of Docker root area will back up the Docker volume mount, not in the case of bind mount. So here I already told you, right? So volume mount, all the volume mounts whichever you are creating for every containers, it will be created in the /var/lib/docker. So if you take the backup of this Docker root area, automatically all the volume mounts will be backed up. Whereas in the bind mount, it is not possible. Why? Because it can be having in any file system. So it can be having in any root file system, it can be there. So we cannot take it. So how we can take the backup? I will try to tell you. For bind mount, what we need to do? We need to know the path on the host machine. So we need to know the path first, and we need to take the backup using any cron jobs, or you can use any other automation tools. So this is how you can take the backup. Whereas for the volume mount, means directly you can take the backup of the Docker root area. And the --tempfs option. This --tempfs option is only available on the Linux where Docker engine was installed. So this is also one thing. So remember that --tempfs option or the tempfs mount. So this type of storage is only available in the Linux operating system where your Docker engine is installed. So this is not available for Windows or Mac operating system because these are desktops. So this is also one important concept you need to understand. To use the --tempfs mode or -tempfs-size. So these are the two options extra it will available. We need to use or we need to specify -mount option while creating a container, which is not possible with the -tempfs. So using this -tempfs, we can only have little power while creating this tempfs mount storage. Whereas if you use the -mount option, so you can have to mention the mode option or the size option, like these different types of options we can use it we can create it by using the -mount option. So these are all the points which we need to remember in the Docker storage. So there are three types, that is nothing but volume mount, bind mount and the tempfs, and these are some of the important points you need to understand. And these are all the things we have already discussed in our previous videos, explaining each one detail by detail with a simple examples also I have did it. So you can, if you want to know more, means you can refer to the previous videos. That's it guys about these points thing. So if you have any doubts or any suggestions, please post the comments below to this video. And if you like this video, please do support me by subscribing to my channel. Thank you.